2 years after he buried the love of his life, Bob Harlan finally climbed into his dusty attic and opened one old shoebox. Inside were 20 yellowed love letters written to his dead wife. Letters from another man. Letters about a secret baby girl he never knew existed. But the most devastating discovery came when he looked closer at the handwriting. Those letters weren't from a stranger. Every single one of them had been written by Bob himself. What he uncovered next destroyed 45 years of marriage, and then brought his family back together in the most heartbreaking way possible. His name was Bob Harlan, 68 years old, retired steelworker from the small town of Millersburg, Ohio. He had lived in the same white house on Maple Street for 52 years. 2 years earlier, his wife Ellie died suddenly of a heart attack. After the funeral, Bob closed the door and barely touched her things. Until that cold November afternoon when the wind was howling and the house felt too empty. He finally climbed the attic stairs. He moved aside old Christmas decorations and Mark's childhood trophies. Way in the back, behind Ellie's winter coats, he found the shoebox with her handwriting. Personal, do not open. His hands were shaking before he even lifted the lid. Inside, a thick stack of envelopes tied with a faded blue ribbon. All addressed to Eleanor Harlan. All from 1988 and 1989. Bob sat down on an old trunk and opened the first letter. My dearest Ellie, I can't stop thinking about the way you smiled at me when no one was looking. The words hit him like a punch. He read letter after letter, passionate, secret, full of love and guilt. They talked about stolen nights at the lake, about promises, and then about the baby. One letter said, when you told me you were carrying our child, my heart nearly stopped. I wanted to run away with both of you. Bob felt the floor disappear under him. Somewhere in this world he had a daughter he never knew about, and his wife had taken that secret to her grave. The very next morning another letter arrived, this one from California. A 37-year-old woman named Sarah Thompson wrote that a DNA test proved Eleanor Harlan was her biological mother. She had stage 4 breast cancer and only months left. She just wanted to meet the man who had been married to her mother before she died. Bob called his son Mark immediately. Mark drove up from Columbus the next day. They sat at the kitchen table for hours, reading every letter together. Mark was stunned. Dad, we have a sister? And Mom had an affair? Bob could only shake his head. After a long silence, Mark asked quietly, are you going to meet her, Dad? 2 weeks later, Bob flew to San Diego, the first flight of his life. Sarah met him at the airport. She was thin from chemo, but when she smiled, Bob saw Ellie's exact dimple. They stood there crying without saying a word at first. For the next 10 days, they walked on the beach, sat in cafes, looked through old photos. Sarah asked about her mother. Bob told her every story he could remember. How Ellie baked the best meatloaf, how she hummed in the kitchen, how she was the strongest woman he had ever known. One quiet evening, Sarah picked up one of the letters and froze. She looked at Bob's driver's license, then back at the letter. Bob, this is your handwriting. You wrote every single one of these. The truth finally came out that night. Bob told her everything. There was never another man. He had written the letters himself when he lost his job and felt worthless. He thought they would make Ellie feel loved again. But when she got pregnant, he panicked and forced her to give the baby up for adoption. Sarah was quiet for a long time. Then she walked over, put her arms around him, and whispered the words that broke him. "I forgive you, Dad." Back in his hotel, Bob found one final note at the bottom of the box. It was from Ellie, written 6 months before she died. She had known all along that he wrote the letters. She understood why, and she asked him to find their daughter if he ever could. They flew back to Ohio. Bob, Mark, and Sarah stood together at Ellie's grave on a cold December afternoon. Bob spoke to the stone with tears in his eyes. Sarah placed white roses and whispered to her mother for the first time. Sarah lived 7 months instead of 6. Bob sold his house in Ohio and moved to San Diego to be near her and his grandson Tyler. He went to every chemo appointment. He cooked Ellie's meatloaf. He taught Tyler how to throw a curveball. At Sarah's funeral by the ocean, Bob stood up and told the whole story in front of everyone. He looked straight into the camera and said, "If you're holding a secret that's destroying you, let it go. It's never too late to fix what's broken." After the funeral, Bob and Tyler walked along the beach at sunset. Bob told his grandson what Ellie used to say: "The best stories aren't the ones with perfect endings. They're the ones where broken people still choose to love anyway." Friends, that's the real end of Bob's story, but it doesn't have to be the end of yours. If you've ever kept a painful secret from the people you love, if you think it's too late to make things right, let this story be your sign. Comment the word truth if you believe forgiveness can heal even the oldest wounds. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And hold you people close. Tomorrow is never promised. I'll see you in the next story.